How's it going, everybody? Welcome to General Hospital MV, my GH After show. Let's get into it. Since we celebrated the 25th anniversary of Nancy Lee Grahn being on the show this week, I say we start with Alexis. Alexis spent the week trying to get all of her affairs in order, doing everything from seeing a prison consultant and finding out what she should expect when she goes to prison, and trying to convince her girls to move into the house together, which Christina wasn't super happy about. By the way, they did acknowledge why Christina wasn't at the hearing in the first place. Apparently it was too much for her. She knew that her mom was going to plead guilty and she didn't want to be there for it, so that's why she wasn't there. All of the Davis girls were pretty emotional this week, especially when they realized just how much their mother was going to miss, including Molly's graduation. So Molly and Christina decided to throw a graduation party for Molly early so that Alexis could see it. That graduation party was part of the standalone Alexis Davis episode that we got in celebration of Nancy being on the show for 25 years, which was a fantastic episode, so let's talk about it. After what has to have been at least a year since they mentioned the broken watch that Alexis had, they finally circled back to it for this specific episode. Personally, I would have rather seen the story play out over several months, but I'm glad that we got back to it regardless, instead of it being dropped forever. Apparently, the first time that watch stopped working was when Mikos Cassadine was abusing Alexis's mom in front of Alexis. It fell off while he was hitting her, and that's when it broke. I am not that surprised that Mikos abused Christina, Alexis's mom. However, I do have to wonder if Mikos ever abused Helena, because we know that she worshipped the ground he walked upon, and we also know that Helena is very capable of dealing with people who've wronged her. So it's a bit, I guess it's a bit weird. I know the guy was crazy, but he'd have to be even twice as crazy to ever wrong Helena like that. Anyway, Alexis spent this episode having a session with Dr. Kevin Collins, trying to figure out who she is today and what her purpose is, why she made all the poor decisions she's made in her life, why she's her own worst enemy, why she's picked all the toxic men in the world. Long story short, the reason why Alexis is such a hot mess is because she felt guilty for not being able to protect her mother against Mikos beating her. Now, as is the standard or the par for the course of these standalone episodes about one character, they jump back and forth a lot between scenes from earlier in the day to later in the evening. It's a little bit confusing, but the most irritating part about it were like the moments where they'd say we're earlier in the day or later in the day, and they do like this bizarre seizure effect. I know, right? Super weird. Earlier in the day, she had a last sort of luncheon with all the men in her life. Valentine Cassadine, Hamilton Finn, Ned Ashton, Quartermaine, and Jasper Jax. I'm not gonna lie, I feel kind of bad that Nancy had to deal with Ingo during an episode that celebrates her work on the show. But at the same time, I did appreciate the irony that Ingo would have to partake in an episode that celebrates a woman that he can't stand. Especially because pretty recently he was on a live stream with Maurice Bernard and showing his disdain for her while he was on set of the show. Because it wasn't too long ago, I'm pretty sure he was probably filming this episode. Anyway, back to the actual plot. So at the end of the episode, they are all celebrating Molly's graduation and taking selfies, and we get to see a fun montage of Alexis over the years. I did love seeing the flashbacks of the classic scenes, like her running out on Ned on their wedding day and her pretending to be the butler. Also the scenes where she tells Sam that she's her daughter, and the scenes where she rescues Christina after she got beaten up by Kiefer and taking her to the hospital and hitting Kiefer with her car. Lots of really good memorable scenes, but I do wish that they showed more of Molly and Alexis because they kind of glossed over that relationship. And young Molly was just fun to watch. The episode was great. I think Nancy Lee Grahn absolutely killed her scenes and showed exactly why she deserves to get celebrated. The only thing that was completely jarring to me was that Diane wasn't in the episode at all. You know, Alexis's best friend that has been her best friend for like, what, the last 12 years? Literally half her time on the show? Maybe Carolyn Hennessy wasn't available, but man, it just felt weird. The episode itself ends with Alexis arriving in Pentonville and meeting her roommate, who's actually trying to prepare for her own parole hearing, and Alexis offers to help. Now, I know the episode kind of appears to be like a last episode for Alexis ever, but Nancy Lee Grahn did confirm that she is still on the show, and this storyline is going to happen on screen. As a huge Nancy/Alexis fan, I just want to say congratulations on 25 years being at General Hospital. I'm such a fan of yours. Not that I think you're watching, but just in case. I love Alexis, and I love Nancy's ability to to bring so many different layers to stories, whether it's a humorous story or a serious story. She brings all of it to the stories that she's given. One of my personal mechanisms in life is to handle any bad situation that I'm in with a bit of humor, because that kind of gets me through it. So I completely relate to Alexis in a lot of ways. So much love, Nancy. Thank you for being on the show. Alright, moving on. Let's talk about Nicholas. Now this week he proves that he's not the brightest bulb on the planet. Cyrus is still trying to get Laura to track down his mother for him, and Laura absolutely refuses. He showed up at her apartment, and Nicholas shows up and grabs Cyrus and threatens him, and of course Cyrus threatens him back. Cyrus dangles Alexis in Nicholas's face and says he knows that she's going to prison and anything can happen in prison, but he'll guarantee her safety if he helps him find his mother. And Nicholas, like an idiot, decides to go for it. Later in the week, he has a drink with Martin and talks about his mother's whereabouts. Obviously, Martin doesn't know where she is, but he mentions the hummingbird cake that she loves, so that convinces Nicholas that he should find a nurse facility near a place that sells hummingbird cakes. It's a bit ridiculous, but whatever. Of course, Laura is naturally terrified for her son, and she calls Ava over and asks her to try and convince him to change his mind, but Ava is dealing with some of her own stuff. While Ava's at the gallery with Kevin, she receives a gift, and it actually turns out to be a severed hand in a box, and naturally she thinks it's from Ryan. Kevin reassures her that it can't be Ryan because of the condition that he's in. Now, while I know it's not exactly out of the realm of possibility that Ryan could have done this, I am more convinced than ever that it is Spencer who is sending those gifts. Spencer has been mentioned a lot on the show lately, and even this week he sends some flowers to Laura and says that he's excited for her to see him graduate. It's so wild to me that Spencer is old enough to graduate already. I mean, it feels like it was just yesterday that he was 8 years old and calling any poor person a townie, but I am looking forward to seeing him back on the show again because it's obviously coming. Alright, moving on, let's talk about the Quartermaine family. Now, Michael and Sasha have officially broken up because Sasha walked in on a moment between Willow and Michael. So clearly this means that soon Michael and Willow will be free to be together to talk endlessly about all the cool, cute things that Wiley did off screen for the rest of eternity. All she's got to do is break up with Chase, which she might not get a chance. We'll talk more about that later though. Let's continue with the Quartermaine. This week we learned that Brook Lynn is in fact faking her pregnancy. It doesn't really surprise me, even though I was leaning towards her giving birth to a baby and it being stillborn and then swapping it out with Maxie's baby. And when I heard or saw this, I was like, yes, that means no baby swap. But then I was like, wait a minute. This is probably too perfect for Maxie and Britt. At first I wasn't quite sure how we were going to get there with the story, but it already is starting. Basically, Brook Lynn was at the Quartermaine house and Valentine paid her a visit, and Brook Lynn's heel broke and she fell flat on her stomach, and of course Valentine was scared and took her to the hospital. Coincidentally, she ends up in the cubicle next to Maxie. Maxie had an ultrasound and Brook Lynn managed to actually steal that photo for herself, ripped off the bottom info to hide the fact that it was actually Maxie's child, and gave that picture to Valentine. However, Britt is already suspicious because she was the one checking in on Brook Lynn. She saw the padded belly and Brook Lynn made up an excuse saying that it was just to protect the real baby. And by the time Britt got back to the room, Brook Lynn was still dressed and she said that she had already seen the doctor, showed her the ultrasound, and walked out. Britt, of course, is already suspicious. It's quite clear to me that eventually Britt and Maxie and Brook Lynn are going to work together. Maxie's probably going to give Brook Lynn her baby to pass off as Valentine's baby. However, since Peter is also really pissed at Valentine, it wouldn't surprise me if he ironically kidnaps Valentine's baby as vengeance and Maxie's screwed anyway. So let's actually talk about Maxie and Britt for a moment because they're already laying the groundwork for this stillbirth to happen. Maxie's having a checkup and had her ultrasound, and she calls Peter because she's nervous, or that's what she wants him to think, of course. Britt actually pulls Peter aside and says that Maxie doesn't know it, but this pressure and all the stress that she's been under is actually affecting her health and could be a dangerous situation for her baby, so you need to back off, and it might actually work. Hard to say because Peter is still pretty obsessed. Peter, of course, is still wreaking havoc around town. As you guys know, Anna, Carly, and Valentine are working together to try and flip Gladys, who they know saw Peter the night of Franco's murder, and Peter sadly already caught on to the fact that Valentine is paying attention to Gladys and connects them back to Anna. And so he decides to go and visit Anna and sees Valentine as well. and threatens the people that they love. Of course, he dressed it all up and said, you know, I'm just trying to keep the peace. Since he already knows that Anna and Valentine have no intention of backing down, he sets his eyes on Dr. Hamilton Finn. Finn, Chase, Gregory, and Jackie are still just trying to recover their relationship. They actually all go to dinner together, and Peter goes to the waiter of that establishment and says to put this poison into Dr. Finn's drink. The problem is Chase was reminiscing about the good old days. There's this little like circular thing on the table where you can put your drinks up and spin things around, and he decides it would be fun to just pretend it's the good old days and put the coffee cups on the round thing and to spin it around, round and round like a merry-go-round. Who do you think is going to get the poisoned coffee? Let me know in the comments below. Personally, my money is either on Chase or Gregory, more so Gregory. The reason why I think it could be Chase, even though he's a very beloved character, is because Joss Wicard and his wife just had their beautiful baby. Congratulations, by the way. So it is possible that Josh wants to take a bit of time to be a stay-at-home DILF. I mean, Dad, my bad. I said what I said. As for Gregory, the reason why I'm more sure that it's him is because he doesn't really have much of a purpose on the show. The actor is certainly not hurting and getting jobs. So just based on that, that's why I'm sure it's most likely gonna be Gregory, but if you have any different theories, let me know in the comments below. One problem I have with Peter still being around at this point is the fact that nobody in town actually likes him. So if Anna and Valentine wanted to pull their resources and kidnap him, no one would miss him. Why is he still here? Why are they continuing to let him wreak havoc when they could just kidnap him? Thankfully, by the end of this week, it actually looked like Anna and Valentine plan on doing something. However, since Finn or one of the family members of Finn are about to get poisoned, I think that's going to slow down their plan just a smidge. I think it's safe to say that the majority of the audience doesn't even care how Peter gets off the show, whether he dies or gets thrown into prison. They just want him gone. I said this on a message board the other day. I was like, you know what? I don't even care how Peter goes. If you want, have Charlotte get bored and tie his shoelaces and push him down the stairs for funsies. If the show is going to continue to have that child act like a demon, then they might as well put her to work. If she were the one to end Peter's life, I would give her a medal and praise the character. Alright, jokes aside, the only other things worth noting this week is that Scott actually pays Jason a visit and says that he knows he's innocent and that to honor Franco's last wish of protecting Jason, he is there for him for whatever he needs. Not that Jason actually needs much, but at least the option is there. Another thing worth noting is that Elizabeth is starting to realize that Jason may have not actually been Franco's killer, and that is causing a strain in her and Cameron's relationship, apparently. All I know is someone needs to go to Elizabeth and explain the Peter theory so that she can explain it to Cameron. The only other thing I can think of this week is that Jocelyn sprained her ankle while practicing volleyball, and that could put a damper on the university she's on the waiting list for, because they're going to be at the tournament, which is in a couple of weeks, and Elizabeth and the doctors are telling her to stay off of her ankle for at least that amount of time, and Jocelyn is not too happy about it. She knows that that particular university is going to be at that final game, and she doesn't want to look like an idiot out there, so that they actually give her more of a chance to be accepted into that school. Stressful high school problems. Anyway, that wraps up my review slash recap. I hope you guys all enjoyed it. If you liked this video, give her a big ol' thumbs up, subscribe if you want to, and I will catch you guys next time. Peace out. Congratulations.